This podcast contains sensitive topics and explicit language that may not be suitable for all listeners. Previously on The Shot.
It, of course, becomes like a whodunit, and everybody's looking at everybody and questioning them, questioning people that they've known for years.
So, yes, that was considered as significant. Did a trained police officer, and maybe because he'd had a little to drink, whatever, when he was told to get down like that, just voluntarily get down.
I get a phone call that they have a lead and they're making an arrest. My first response was, okay, finally, something.
The first voice you're about to hear is Detective John Allen. The second is Kareem Turner. Turner, along with Raymond Perry, were suspects in the murder of Victor Decker. The audio is from Turner's initial interrogation, where police tried to convince him to turn on Perry. It was obtained from credible sources who wished to remain anonymous.
You can't help what that dude did, period. You can't help it. But you can make it a lot better for yourself. For all I know, all right, you took the guy that was handing shot the dude, or you told him to shoot. I don't fucking know, all right? That's why you're not charged with no murder. Because I'm raising you in.
Because, like, it's almost as if, like, you really actually believe that I know him. I honestly don't. I never seen that guy in my life, like, ever.
I'm Gary Harkeye.
I'm Joanne Kimberlin. We're reporters at the Virginian-Pilot in Norfolk, Virginia.
And this is the third episode of The Shot.
We don't have audio from Raymond Perry's interrogation, but he was charged as the triggerman, the guy who put the bullet in the head of Victor Decker. Decker was a Norfolk police officer. He was off duty when he was killed in October 2010 in neighboring Virginia Beach. It took police 18 months to arrest anyone. First Perry in the summer of 2012. That fall, Turner was picked up on related robbery charges. Police suspected the pair had spotted Decker, a random victim, tried to rob him, and wound up killing him. Turner was interrogated in early December 2012 when he was taken into custody and wound up charged with murder.
So whatever you want, man, but I mean, let's not act like sorting it out. Sorting it out, let me figure out how the hell I'm going to get out of this shit, because it's starting to get real deep.
Like, now what? I feel like I'm in some shit that I don't even know none of those people y'all said.
The thing is, you're guilty as hell, and you don't know what the fuck to do. You're guilty as shit, and you're worried about what the fuck am I going to do, and now things are getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Decker's death is the only unsolved cop killing in our area. It was a single shot and point blank at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was killed outside a borrow pit. He'd been partying with friends at a nearby bar called Atlantis. Amateur dancers were working a stripper pole while the bar raised money for breast cancer awareness. Matt Waters, a bouncer who knew Decker, is one of a number of people who think beach police got it wrong when they arrested Turner and Perry.
I don't think it was something random. I can tell you that much. I don't think it was something random. Not the way he was, feeling uneasy that night. So I mean, he was enjoying the fact that he was there for the benefit. He was there for that cause, and if it hadn't been for that cause, he wouldn't have been in a place like that.
Let's get one thing straight. Kareem Turner and Raymond Perry were not model citizens. But here's the point. Did they kill Victor Decker? And if they didn't, who did? Turner and Perry come from rough Norfolk neighborhoods. They're both black and in their 20s. Perry was already behind bars for other crimes when he was charged with Decker's murder. His rap sheet goes back to when he was about 10. 14 convictions in juvenile court, stuff like assault, robbery, and carjacking. When Perry was 19, he went on a hold-up spree in Virginia and North Carolina. About 2 weeks after Decker was killed, Norfolk police arrested Perry for shooting a clerk at a gas station. The clerk survived, but Perry got about 90 years in federal prison.
Turner had also been in trouble, but not like Perry. He was 24 and had 2 little girls. He's lived around Hampton Roads all his life, usually with his mom or grandmother. He dropped out of school in the 8th grade. Turner, who calls himself Hess Buck, wanted to be a rapper. He wore a gold grill and dreadlocks and posted on YouTube.
That's doing Hess Buck, live, Norfolk. See, I know that y'all scared to be around me. I can tell by the way y'all move. The way y'all moving ain't scared to catch nobody. You can tell by the shit I do. The shit I do when I'm scared to tell somebody.
But he was mostly a hustler. He racked up some offenses, nothing violent. Traffic and minor criminal convictions, small-time drug deals, maybe some stolen goods. Here and there, he'd done a few days or a few months in jail. At the time of his arrest, Turner said he was working at a demolition company. He made extra money as a party promoter, helping pump up attendance at local clubs.
Now's the time to think about your family and all this. I know you were there. You didn't pull the trigger. You didn't have nothing to do with it. I understand that. The reason you're charged is, I can't assume that. I can't, all right? I have a legal obligation to take you to jail. Just because you're there when something bad happens, I got to assume that you're knee-deep in it unless I know otherwise. Yeah. I know what Perry's all about. I know what these other guys are all about. I know what they do. And I know what you do. Yeah. I know exactly what you do. Like I said, the hustle, this is the same stuff you're involved in all the time. It's just shit like this. Except you didn't feel too good about this when it got ready to go down, and it went really, 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 really fucking bad. That's the only difference.
Mike Mather, a former Virginian-Pilot and TV reporter, spent a lot of time covering the Decker case.
So when they did finally make some arrests, what were you thinking then when you heard who it was? And
it was so much time had passed, and they kept insisting this was not a cold case. But, from covering murders for nearly 30 years, I knew that police officers made their biggest progress in the first 24 to 48 hours. And then, even once a week passed or a month passed without any kind of arrest or without any kind of effort to go to a grand jury, that the cases would start to slip away. So 2 years was a startling amount of time. So this is a incredibly high-profile case, a notorious case. But they arrested people and tried to slide them in for their first hearings without any type of public acknowledgement.
Why Perry and Turner? In the early days after the arrests, it wasn't clear what kind of evidence police had on them, and the prosecutor, just like police, won't talk to us for this podcast. We asked Colin Stolley. He's the Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia Beach. Stolley has been rising through the ranks there for 20 years. He was elected to the top spot as the Decker case was working its way through court. Stolley declined to talk to us. We sent a Freedom of Information Act request for his office's case records. He turned us down for that too. In Virginia, cops and prosecutors can pretty much keep their investigative files closed forever.
Harvey Bryant used to be Stolley's boss. When Bryant retired, Stolley inherited the Decker case from him.
We don't want to do anything that would prevent this from being prosecuted in the future or anything like that. But those are the things that we, it's hard for us to gauge by ourselves.
The prosecution and the police have to hold some things close to the vest because that helps the prosecution and the police determine the credibility of someone who may come forward and say, well, I haven't come forward in all this time, but I was there, and I saw so-and-so, and I saw this, and I saw that, and I saw the body, and then they assess what they know really was the status of the scene, what it looked like when the police arrived, and compare that to what this person is telling them. As a for instance, someone comes forward and says, well, I was out there that night. I was just been afraid to come forward. And yes, I saw that Officer Decker's truck had been flipped over. Well, right then, that person wasn't there, or they're lying because the truck wasn't found tipped over.
At one point during Turner's interrogation, he's allowed to use the phone. He calls his mother to tell her what's happening.
Mama, hey, I don't know, Mom, they got me on the beach. They said that this police officer had got killed and robbed. I don't know, I'm about to go to jail now. They about to take me. Yeah, they pinning the robberies on me, I guess. They know I didn't do nothing. They know I didn't do nothing at all. But they saying they just know I was there. But I wasn't there. I don't even know. I was like, what made y'all come get me? And I'm like, I don't know none of them, like at all. Yeah, I need a lawyer bad.
Meet Tom Shepard, one of the lawyers who wound up with Turner's case.
I hadn't had a case that serious in terms of charges, and I hadn't had a case that had that much attention on it. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything that I should be doing. I handled the case myself for a few months before I asked Emily. I begged Emily, please get involved.
My name's Emily Munn. I'm an attorney in private practice in Norfolk. I was brought into this case because Tom Shepard, who worked with me at the time, was appointed on it by the Virginia Beach Circuit Court, and he had not done a trial yet, a jury trial, as a defense attorney.
I'm Jennifer Stanton. I was one of the counsel for Raymond Perry. I've handled something like 14 or 15 capital murder cases so far in federal and state court.
Stanton has since been appointed to head the region's Capital Defender's Office, the place where indigent clients facing the death penalty can get help. She and Munn have been friends for years.
We've had several cases, I think, over the years where we've represented co-defendants or things of that nature.
When I started as a young lawyer, I realized that there aren't very many women who do criminal defense, who are willing to be in rooms with men, usually, who are accused of really bad things. So I have identified with her for a really long time as very good at this job.
I think it'd be fair to say we both have a very similar mindset when it comes to dealing with our cases, which is essentially, we both firmly believe in the Constitution, and if you want to get my client behind bars, you're going to have to go through me to do it.
The prosecutors who we go up against, they know which attorneys they can take lunch money from and which ones they're going to get a fight from. And I would say that we're both proud to be the kind that don't give up our lunch money.
Here's Stanton's take on Raymond Perry.
My impression now is pretty much my impression that I had from the beginning. I went to talk to the client for the very first time. I came out of that meeting utterly convinced they had the wrong guy. In this business, I think Emily will agree, you become really good at reading when your client's bullshitting you or not, or when other witnesses or the police are, or the prosecutor. And my client was in custody for completely unrelated federal crimes, none of which had anything to do with Decker's murder. He'd been in custody on the federal charges for, maybe a year, if not more, at that point in time. And he was one of the rare clients who was willing to just answer my questions, good, bad, or ugly, from the get-go. But between the way he was answering my questions and other things that I can't discuss with you, my gut said this guy had nothing to do with this, and I was going to run with that.
Turner's attorneys felt the same way.
It became really clear to us from the beginning that this young man was not guilty of this, that whatever circumstances put him in a position to get arrested, he might not have been a saint, might not have been innocent of everything that he had ever been accused of in his life, but he was innocent of this. Any experienced defense attorney will tell you that the cases you lose sleep over are the ones where the people didn't do it. And I'll tell you, I was hesitant to get involved because I knew Victor Decker. I had done enough defense work that I knew him as a police officer. I found him to be a likable guy. I immediately felt that I did not want to be associated with the person who killed him.
It also felt a little too close to another case she'd worked on.
I mean, if we talk about full circle, I represented a defendant who was involved in the shooting where Victor Decker killed an offender who was armed over by the old library in Norfolk.
Remember Brighton Alderman? Decker had killed his crime partner, Marlon Sanders, in a downtown shootout in 2009. Munn was Alderman's lawyer in that case.
In the time between when those boys one was killed, one was arrested, and then my client went to trial, Decker had passed away.
Both Turner and Perry were facing a string of charges, including murder. First degree for Kareem Turner, the accused accomplice. Capital murder for Raymond Perry, the accused triggerman. In Virginia, capital murder could mean the death penalty. Stakes like that mean the defense gets more resources. His lawyers could bill the state for more hours, and they got more funds to hire experts and investigators. Since their cases were so closely tied, Stanton and Munn decided to work together. When did you all get together, and what was that like?
Well, Tom and Emily and their investigator came over and met with me and David Bouchard, the other attorney, and our investigator, Larry Smith, out of Richmond, at my office. We order up Thai food or something from somewhere in Norfolk and probably had some alcohol in there somewhere, but pretty much sat around our conference room table for several hours, and talked about what witnesses they were planning to call, what they were going to be saying, who they needed to subpoena to counteract certain things.
We haven't talked to Turner or Perry. We'll explain more about that later. But here's what Emily Munn has to say about Turner.
Kareem Turner was really, my impression of him from the beginning was that he was just very quiet and confident. He was willing to talk to us and answer questions because he had nothing to hide and he wasn't there. He asked questions about who was saying what and why. He gave a long statement to the detectives when he was arrested, denying it, asking them a lot of questions about where he was supposed to have been. And so he was never someone who was angry or frustrated by the injustice of it. He was just confident that it was going to work itself out.
Michael Muhammad, a community activist, you met him in episode 1, has known Turner and his family for a long time. He says Turner was smart and talented, and he hoped music would be his ticket out.
When you're a young man like him, it used to be a time where the basketball court or the football field were the escape from abject poverty in the black community. But then came hip hop. And so those who necessarily didn't find themselves as athletes found another outlet by which they could possibly escape. And that was the direction Hess was taking. I believe he would have made it. I really do, because he had that flair, that energy, that, as they would say, je ne sais quoi, about himself that allowed him to move in such a way that made him attractive. And I believe he would have made it.
Rakiria Bibbins also knew Turner. He was a friend of her mother's. Bibbins was 15 when the cops came for Turner at her house on Sewell's Point Road in Norfolk.
What do you remember about him from that time?
He was like everything, like as far as like I can say like he was like a father figure for me. You know what I'm saying? Like he done did more than my dad has ever did in my whole 20 years of life. Like everything, like from coming up to the schools when they used to like misbehave, like from taking me to school, waking me up, you know what I'm saying? Anything that I ever needed, he did it. Like he was involved so much, like so much.
Were you there the day that he was arrested for the murder of Victor Decker?
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
I remember he was in my room and we was talking and he was like, somebody wanted to buy something. He'll be right back. And it was me and my little brother. And he came out. He left, and when he went outside, I think my little brother followed behind him. And when my little brother came back in, he was like, he told me, he ran in my room, and he was like, they got him. So I'm like, who? But I'm thinking, like, it's just the regular police, like, they just messing with him, bothering him and stuff like that. But when I went outside, I seen otherwise. Like, it was guns drawn to me and everything.
Turner's interrogation lasted 5 or 6 hours. The audio is pretty bad. Just to help you out, Detective Allen and another detective are still trying to get Turner to turn on Perry, to say, yes, we were together, and the dude just went crazy. I couldn't stop him.
You out in the streets like everyone else, do your thing. But occasionally, you get a guy like this, show the paper, that just takes it too far. A guy that don't know how just to play it cool, do what you got to do when you got to do it, hustle when you got to, take care of your business when you have to, put in some work, but chill out about it. This guy's reckless. But what happens is when a reckless guy goes out and does reckless things, this is the type of shit that happens. And it only takes one guy to bring everyone else down. We're sitting here now, giving you that opportunity. Look, man, I didn't come forward.
Yeah,
I'm scared shitless. I get what you're saying, man. I didn't come forward scared shitless. Look, I'm out with this dude. We just rolling around. Yeah, we may be thinking about. I don't care what you're thinking about doing or what you almost did. I don't give a shit about that. I'm worried about what happened in that parking lot, and I know. And by you not owning up to it, being straight with it, it's going to fuck you, man, because this is not a daily occurrence with me.
It's going to make it look like you were in for the whole thing because you're trying to cover up for it. All right?
Because I really don't know about, like, honestly, if I even knew a part, I would be like, yeah, I seen it, but I don't even know a part to this shit. I don't know what. This is out the blue.
This is the only audio we have of Raymond Perry, a TV segment from Mather, who interviewed him in jail. Perry is talking to Mather through one of those metal grates in a visitation room.
So when the detectives came to see you down in Bennettsville, right?
Yes, sir.
What did they tell you?
Well, they just told me that I was being charged for a murder of Mr. Victor Decker, a murder and a robbery.
Did they say that they had any evidence to show you, or they just told you?
They just told me that's what people told them, that I done it.
They didn't say, we got DNA, we got a gun?
No. They didn't say none of that, and I'm sure they're not going to have none of that on me.
How do you know the Perry family?
I've known the Perry family, their grandmother, Ms. Miles, same last name as my family's. But in my community work, Ms. Miles belonged to a church. She was a beautiful, saintly woman who's passed on. She belonged to a church in Park Place, Faith Covenant Christian Center.
So did you know Raymond Perry before the shooting? As a child?
I knew him as a young boy.
So when the shooting happened, you knew who he was, and you reached out to the family.
Yes.
What did they say about this case in particular?
They maintained from the day that I spoke to his mother that her son was innocent and that he was being framed, and I believed her. None of the pieces fit.
Stanton says Perry volunteered to take a lie detector test, even though they're not admissible in Virginia courts. Detectives use polygraphs as interrogation tools, mostly to eliminate suspects. But if Perry passed his polygraph, Stanton was hoping to convince the judge to let her use the results as evidence. At the very least, she figured she could plant doubt in prosecutors' heads.
We used the polygrapher, Barry Colvert, that the governor's office uses to polygraph all of the actual innocence cases before the governor will grant clemency or whatever.
Colvert has been called a legendary questioner. He was a polygraph examiner and interrogator for the FBI's Washington field office, one of their top guys. Colvert has worked on some notorious cases, like the Walker family and Jonathan Pollard spy cases. After he retired, Colvert polygraphed Congressman Gary Condit. He was suspected in the disappearance of Chandra Levy, the 24-year-old intern who vanished in 2001. The case consumed the tabloids, especially after Condit admitted to having an affair with her. Colvert's polygraph of Condit concluded he was innocent. Condit was eventually cleared. Colvert was also involved in exonerating Thomas Hainsworth. Hainsworth is a Virginia man who spent 27 years in prison for rape before he was finally cleared and released.
Colvert gave Perry a polygraph on July 9, 2013 in the Virginia Beach jail. The test lasted an hour and a half. Polygraph sessions start with neutral or irrelevant questions, with sensors reading blood pressure, perspiration, and things like that to get a baseline. The relevant questions come later. Lies cause a spike in the readings. Did you shoot a man in the vicinity of the Atlantis nightclub in Virginia Beach, Virginia in October of 2010? Answer, no. Were you present when that man was shot in the vicinity of the Atlantis nightclub in October of 2010? Answer, no. Perry told Colvert he had no idea where the club was until he saw it described on TV.
He came out of there and just took one look at us and said, "Cleanest box I have given in 30 years. No way your guy was involved in this."
The results were given to the Commonwealth's attorney. According to the defense, prosecutors had the results analyzed and found no conflicts. Perry offered to take another polygraph, one given by police or prosecutors. The Commonwealth's attorney never replied to that offer. Stanton had no luck with the judge either. This is Harvey Bryant again, the retired prosecutor.
I felt that a reasonable, intelligent jury assessing all the evidence would find that the witnesses that we had were enough to say, yes, I believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Raymond Perry killed Victor Decker.
The defense had him take they had a polygraph administered to him. They said they made the results available to the prosecutors, and he had passed it. Did that have any impact on you, or if it didn't, why doesn't it?
Well, people's faith in polygraphs varies, and it varies so much that a lot of people won't take the word for it unless they know the polygrapher, because it's an art and a science to be able to read the tea leaves in that little needle as it goes back and forth. Polygraphs are not admissible in evidence. If you don't want to come in, they're not admissible for the prosecution or the defense. It's just an investigative tool. Very early in my career, this is actually when I was a defense attorney, a lady came into my office seeking representation. She was from Maryland, and she was accused of this check fraud case, forgery. She said, I didn't do this, but they want me to take a polygraph. And I said, well, the polygraph is not admissible, and if you're absolutely sure, you didn't do this, and you're telling the truth, go on down to the Norfolk Police Department and take the polygraph. She went down there, and they called me and said, yeah, she passed the polygraph. 2 weeks later, she walked into the police department where she lived in Maryland and confessed. So there's a polygraph story out of thousands, but from that moment on, I always doubted polygraphs. And I think there's good reason why the legislature has said polygraphs are not admitted in evidence.
The defense attorneys pored over boxes and boxes of information. They found no forensics, and no signs that Turner and Perry even knew each other.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about Kareem Turner and what, we were going to have to tell his mom if, we went to court, and we were confident. We were confident that we would be able to put on a very, very good defense. But you never know. Trial work it's really hard to predict. Cases that you think you're going to win, you lose. Cases you think you're going to lose, you win. It's especially with a jury. We're talking about 12 human beings.
There was no question that a person died.
Right.
There was no question that there was a murder scene. There was a body. It was bad. It was a man who Tom and I both knew from working in Norfolk, a police officer. There's no question that the crime scene happened. There just wasn't anything specific to Kareem Turner. So a ton of really good police work as far as collecting evidence at the scene, pictures, measurements, everything like that, but nothing specific to the client.
I was just shocked at the lack. I wouldn't have felt comfortable even charging with what they had, but that's their call. And again, they do a very good job. But I wouldn't have gone that far.
The Norfolk Police Department wanted the case to be solved. Virginia Beach wanted the case to be solved. I'm sure that Decker's family wanted the case to be solved. So there was certainly a lot of desire on everybody's part to make it happen. And it took too long as it was. And they already, with every month that went by, I'm sure I wasn't inside of that process, but I can only imagine that there was a lot of pressure to have it finished.
Well, I don't think pressure is the correct word at any point in this case. Nobody needed to be pressured to want to find out who did this. The pressure, if any, was all self-imposed because somebody who killed Victor Decker in cold blood, whether he was a police officer or not, that was an execution. That could have been Joe Schmo, the rag man, and it was a horrible thing. And somebody was walking around out there who cared that little about human life. And so you want to find that person.
Let me ask you this about the execution aspect of this murder.
Well, I say execution from the style of it. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
I know, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where my question lies, is that it does look like an execution, even to somebody who, like me, who doesn't, have the expertise that you do. That's what it looks like. But at the same time, that, in my mind, doesn't mesh with the idea that this was a random robbery, because how often do random robberies end in an execution?
I don't know what the frequency is, but there are a number of cases in the country, and there have been some in our area where, they get the clerks to get down, hold up your hands, turn your back, whatever, and then shoot them before they leave. I mean, it happens. I've always said I'm never going like that. My blood's going to be splattered all over the bank because I'm not going to lay down and get shot in the head. But some people think, and the police actually advise you, don't fight this, go along with it, stay calm. I think that given the background of the two that we believe did this, especially Perry, if he felt that Decker got a good look at him, probably planned to kill him from the beginning, whoever he was going to rob. Just, I can't have another witness out there saying I robbed them. Here's a man that we know had done multiple armed robberies, very dangerous person, who the feds, thank goodness, gave 90-some years to. So, which also meant, in our case, he really had nothing to lose. We knew he was going to go to trial. There's no need. Why would somebody who's already got 97 years to do in the federal system, which is like life for sure, why would he ever plead guilty? There's no need to, I'll have a trial, go ahead. Means I get to be out of federal prison for a while. I'll be up here in Virginia Beach or wherever we would house them.
But Dennis Stevens can't figure out what police and prosecutors were thinking. Stevens is a PhD who's taught criminal psychology at a number of universities. He's also taught law enforcement and correctional officers. He's counseled felons in maximum security prisons. He's conducted 100 peer-reviewed studies and published over 20 textbooks used in college classrooms. Stevens, he goes by crime professor, says the Decker case, the way police painted it, didn't add up in a number of major ways. For starters, young fit men like Decker aren't the kind of random victims robbers are looking for.
Generally, I learned long ago that even with some of the high custody individuals I've had to deal with, that they would not attack somebody that could fight back. What they're doing is, it's almost as if they have a PhD in psychology. They're reading your body language. And if that body language appears to be vulnerable, if I can attack you and you're not going to fight back, then I'm going to attack you. I need that big word, the opportunity. Motive, opportunity. Most people who engage in crimes like robbery, even horrible crimes like rape, they will not attack somebody that'll fight back.
So this person not only attacked him, they got within grappling distance of him. I mean, they got so close that he could have reached out and,
Right. Exactly.
They don't get within that kind of distance.
And it really couldn't have been a robbery. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I see he had his wedding ring on his hand?
Yeah. They didn't take his cell phone or his wedding ring.
Yeah. They took his wallet and dumped it somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Didn't use any of the credit cards that were in it.
I'm looking at Turner and Perry. I think those were the individuals.
Yeah.
They would have grabbed the ring.
We took that back to Bryant.
We've talked to some criminologists, criminal profiler type folks, and it's not that someone would wind up dead in a random robbery, that the victim would. It's the proximity of the killing, the contact wound, that a random robber rarely gets that close to a victim, particularly a young, fit victim who is facing him. You're coming within grappling range at that point.
Yeah. No, I accept all that. That would be the norm.
But that doesn't mean it's not possible.
That doesn't mean that it didn't happen in this case. I think it's, the real mystery is why and under what circumstances did Officer Decker put himself in that position.
Throughout his interrogation, Turner never gives in. He says he doesn't know anything about Decker's murder. But somewhere in there, something dawns on him. The reason why he's there.
When you go to jail on this, right, the only thing that's going to happen is more charges. There's a lot of people in jail that have sat in your seat and have said, you know what, I can beat this, they don't have nothing, I'm going to let it ride out. Well, make something clear, man. I don't want to see you go into jail. I don't want to see you get in a lot of trouble for something you were just there for.
Yeah, see,
I don't want to see that.
The way I'm looking at this is it's like when I was in jail, people were saying, well, look, if you know you ain't do it, don't show nobody your paperwork, because they'll just hop on your case and say you did it, and that's the only thing I think. Maybe somebody just picked me. I don't know why.
No, people try to jump cases all the time.
Yeah.
That's what we call it. You know what? We're used to it. This thing had nothing to do with jumping cases.
Coming up on The Shot.
You have to remember that people who are incarcerated, there's a very small sense of civic responsibility behind the walls, okay? There's usually a quid pro quo. You give something, you get something in return.
I wanted to be there. I wanted them to see who I was.
So you're pretty much losing your mind. But every now and then, what you need to know is in there, because these people cannot stop talking.
Thanks for listening. And if you like this podcast, do us a favor and go on iTunes and give us a good review. 5-star reviews will help more listeners find us. The Shot was produced by Randy Greenwell and edited by Bill Henry, with special help from Josh Davidsburg. Music is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. WTKR contributed TV news clips. Will Halp is our digital graphics editor. For graphics, photos, and more, go to pilotonline.com/theshot.
Sources for this podcast include documents and other materials found in court records or obtained by the pilot from credible sources who wish to remain anonymous.